All right, everyone, I officially hit record. We're gonna get started. My name is Mark Shisham, and I'm representing the Student Affairs Assessment Initiative team. David and Marina are on that team as well. We're always looking for new members. So if you'd like to join the assessment initiative, please contact us afterwards. We have a rigorous testing process. The physical thing is not too hard. I swear you can handle it. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna do my best to make this short and then shut up. My goal for these sessions is always for student affairs staff to get another tool in their tool belt, another skill to make them better at telling their stories. Of course, on the assessment initiative team, we care a lot about the annual report and how you tell your story for that. But we've been saying for many, many years, that's not really an assessment thing. That's more of a brag book thing. And so I think today's is going to be particularly helpful for that. But I also just want to put it out there that this is all part of a bigger menu of a challenge we put forth to all of you. How do you measure your work? How do you know it's working? How do you know that what you're doing is having an impact? And so we want you to be good at telling your stories. And I can't think of a better crew to give us a short training on how to get better at telling our stories than the OPAC crew. Is it OPAC?
OPAC, yeah.
OPAC? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going with it. I'm thinking about OPEC now. Anyways, here's my role. I'm supposed to do the objectives, and then what we're gonna do is at the end, I'm gonna have you all raise your hands about whether we met these objectives. So our objectives for today are to explain when and why to contact UCSB Public Affairs and Communications, to analyze marketing essentials that we can all use for improving our department's communication and impact, and then to explore some exciting new ways to tell our stories and improve our services for modern university students, whatever that means, right? What is the modern university student? But of course, we're also thinking about how to tell our stories for parents and colleagues as well. I want to tell you all, I've known Alex for many, many years. This is a veteran, and I know his team probably feels the same way. We do not have a crew today that has given us just the basics that anybody could do. We have a crew today that knows UCSB. We have a crew today that knows what's really going on. They're literally on the cutting edge of what's going on of this place. So I couldn't think of a better group to come give us a little bit of education. I want to thank you all for showing up in person. We're doing a recording, so I'm going to do my best to shut up as I sit down. But I just want to remind you all that we are recording. So without further ado, I'll let you all come on up.
All right, let's do it.
And take over.
Thank you.
Hey, Betsy.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, if at any point you need us to lean into that microphone, we will, but I try to just project for everyone's sake. So my name is Alex Parraga. Thank you for that warm welcome. I might need to come back regularly because that felt really good. Appreciate it. I have been at the university for 10 years. Actually, last week was my 10-year mark, which is nuts. And it's been a slow but steady climb with our team in the office. A little bit of background: when I started, I was kind of might be looked at as an individual contributor in marketing. I was a marketing team of one, along with our news and media relations function, which has been here for years and years. And over the years, we've grown our team, and you'll hear from some of my colleagues here in a minute. And I think by growing our team and building a case for impact and how we can support the university and raise the reputation of UC Santa Barbara, that built a case for bringing on more resources. And so I think right now our marketing team is probably 6 or 7, but we've done some work to integrate our news and media relations team to about 12 or 13 of us that are working really well lately. And because we're a larger team, we're able to extend ourselves to our university colleagues more than we have in the past to provide consultation and guidance. And so hopefully y'all get that from today's presentation. So my role is Chief Marketing Officer. I look after all of our creative and marketing and editorial activities within the office. And then, like I mentioned, consult with areas in terms of how to raise their own presence within the university community. And I will turn it over to Katie for an introduction.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hi. So I'm Katie Falcone. I am our content marketing manager in the Office of Public Affairs and Communications. I deal with producing digital content for our own channels, especially social media. The flagship UC Santa Barbara social media channels. And also mapping that content to other own channels like email marketing and our ucsb.edu website. I work with like a team of up to now, I think we're at 13 students, and a couple of my other full-time colleagues in OPAC. And I've been here 5 years.
I'm kind of the newer person. I guess I'm hitting 2 years now. My name is Kiki Reyes. I'm the media relations manager here at UCSB. So basically I handle anything requiring media. I do inquiries, requests, filming, I pitch to media, and I also deal with breaking news, which is, happens anytime. So I'll be working on something and then I have to turn my attention to breaking news, which, I have experience with journalism. I wrote for The Independent, The Voice. I worked at KYT Channel 3 News for 2 years. And then I was the news editor at the channels at City College. And I worked at KSBY as a news producer. So I'm passionate about media. So, and I'm literally living the dream with my job because that's all I do.
Okay, so before we dive into the meat of the presentation, we're here for y'all. So if you see anything or hear anything that you're like, wait a minute, I've got a question on that, feel free to raise your hand. We've got time at the end, of course, for open dialogue and more questions, but we don't want to leave anybody confused and want to make sure we're as clear and accurate as possible. So feel free. Let's do an overview of what we do in OPAC, Office of Public Affairs and Communications. So no joke, had you looked at this list 10 years ago, going back to what I just said, you would probably only see about 3 or 4 bullet points. And that's what I mean in terms of the growth of bringing in subject matter experts who can tackle kind of the full marketing and media mix in terms of discipline and expertise. So I put brand management at the top of the list. That's my background prior to coming to UC Santa Barbara. I worked in the ad agency space, helping private brands build and advertise globally. That's where my passion really lies. And actually one of the opportunities at UC Santa Barbara that attracted me here was that there was kind of a branding initiative in the works at the time. So everything you see from us will be properly branded to our standards. We launched those brand standards back in 2018. And honestly, it's an ongoing thing. And this is typical in higher ed. It's not like in the private sector where you launch a brand and you've got all the money in the world to activate all of your channels. In higher ed, we're dealing with not that scale of resources. And so it's a little more grassroots and organic. And so we're always looking for opportunities to make sure that our brand is represented across the university. And there's still a lot of those opportunities out there. Editorial strategy and execution, that was a function that has historically been in our office for decades. And currently where you might run into that is with the Current. Is everyone familiar with the Current in the room? So it's the official campus news sites managed by our editorial director and a team of writers. And then most recently is UC Santa Barbara Magazine, which was a relaunch of sorts of Coastlines, which was the former alumni magazine. What we did is we partnered with Alumni Affairs and we relaunched the magazine to have a broader editorial perspective and hopefully broader reach. So alumni are still squarely our target audience, but we also want to reach our staff and our faculty, our local community, the general public. And so we're working on ramping up the distribution there. We're about 4 or 5 issues in to UC Santa Barbara Magazine. If you're curious, magazine.ucsb.edu, you can flip through any issue on a webpage or in a nice PDF format. Media relations, Kiki here is carrying the torch on that one, but that's another function that's been in our office for years. Social media strategy and publishing falls squarely in Katie's camp for years. And I know this might resonate with many of y'all. It was our students who were doing the daily planning and publishing, and they did a phenomenal job. But to bring on strategic folks who can oversee and kind of build on that has made a world of difference while still being inclusive with our students to get their insights and ideas. Email strategy and deployment was a new function, so we run a couple of newsletters and consult on newsletters with our alumni affairs team, with our development group. They're all within our division. With the current, we send out a weekly or twice weekly email to our staff and faculty on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the latest news. And then we also offer a platform via Emma that I know Student Affairs also uses to help ensure best practices are being carried out across the university. Website design is another. I think we started really focusing on that about 7-8 years ago. We have a senior digital designer in our office who manages that, and then we have a web services and technology team that partner more on the web development side to bring those to life. I'm going to speak more about that in a little bit. Let's see, what else do we have here? Print design, that's pretty straightforward. Photography, our designer is also a professional photographer, so we all benefit from that. Many of the photos that you see in campus communications are probably his work. His name is Matt Perko, and I'll talk more about our library photos in a moment. Videography, we have a dedicated videographer in our office who produces news videos, social media videos, some broadcast videos. If it's got video at the end of it, she is involved and does a phenomenal job. Analytics is really important. It's not something that every area can take on because it really is something that you have to study regularly and understand how to use some of these analytics tools, and then understand how to digest that data and spit it out in a way that people can understand it and that it's actionable to improve our communications. But we focus on analytics for our emails that go out, understanding how they perform. And then for our websites, what are people looking for on our websites? Is it hard to find, or is it easy to find? What's the most popular content so that we can inform future decisions in terms of the type of content we're producing? And then most recently, I think in the past couple of years, we brought in an internal employee communications specialist that partners with areas of campus that need to reach our employees with these campus-wide messages. So it was probably most evident during COVID, where you probably got at least a monthly email about the latest COVID protocols and operations. That's something that falls within our internal employee communications, or just any message that needs to reach all faculty, staff, and sometimes all faculty, staff, and students, and then we'll partner with VCSA on those types of communications.
Alex,
Yes.
for photography and videography, is that call under you, or yeah?
That's a great question. So Kerr Hall is instructional
Yes,
development.
yes.
So there's a specific scope that they have relative to carrying out instruction. Our photography and videography is more for the external audiences, and so producing, things for the general public, towards prospective students, towards our alumni, some for our campus community, but that's kind of how we divide and conquer on those specialties. Okay, when to contact OPAC. Hint, check off that first objective here. Okay, so Kiki, why don't you talk a little bit more about media inquiries?
I don't know if you guys have ever gotten a media inquiry or a request or interview. They're usually through email. Sometimes they'll call you. But I'm here to make your life easier. For example, if you get an email saying, oh, I want to interview you, here are the questions, you can forward it to me, and I can help you draft something out. Or, there are times where you're too busy to even do it. So I'm that person that'll reach out and say, hey, listen, we're not interested. So I'm just here for whatever you need, and I think that media inquiries are a perfect time to highlight the work that you're doing or what's going on at UCSB. Sometimes, we don't know the amazing work that's being done, and that's my job to pitch stories and make sure that, the public knows about this. Another thing that sometimes we struggle with, sometimes media will reach out to different departments or different people in a department, and they'll give a different message, each person, and that becomes the story. So it's good to reach out to me. Sometimes I know that you could do it on your own, but I want to make sure that we're giving out the same messaging to each person. So we don't have something like that happens. But this is not to discourage anyone. This is just to understand kind of how media works, and as someone that has been a news producer, I kind of understand people are always looking for a story.
Yeah, and if I can add to that too, I think just in general within the higher ed space, the best practice of media inquiries straight to the media relations manager. I think part of the conversation is also sometimes, well, who's the appropriate person to respond? Should it be the person who received it? Should it be someone from public affairs? Should we ladder it up to senior staff within student affairs? So that's all part of the dialogue that takes place. But I think the main point is like, y'all shouldn't have to worry or deal with media. We have people here to do that. It can become a huge time suck, as Kiki knows firsthand. So they'll chase her around.
It's okay.
But that's why we have the resource here.
And there are times where I will get to know you guys and they'll reach out for an expert and I'll reach out to you guys, see if you're interested. And like I said, you can always say no. I won't force anyone to do anything they don't want to, but I mean, so that's another thing that I'll reach out to you about that sometimes. And then moving on, I also am the person that does the filming permits on campus. Over the summer, we actually had PBS reach out to us to film an episode of Closer to the Truth. I handle the permit, but what is so important about coming to me, like these emails, like if a production company reaches out to you, you have to forward these to me because I'm the one who signs the permit and makes it okay. What is so important about that is those permits allow you to film inside. If you don't have that, you cannot film inside at all. And I know UCSB is a public university. So, I mean, you can film outside as long as you don't have our branding like in the video. And then we have like the arbor for people that they're doing their club organizations, but obviously other people come and from the public and they have their own booths and they can, film there. But it's important to reach out if you're going to do like an on-camera interview inside that requires a permit. So for example, when PBS reached out to me, they had a crew come over too. So I also have to get liability waivers for each person that is on set. So yeah, it's kind of like you just reach out to me. I have these 2 documents. I will, reach out to the production crew and then they'll fill them out. I review them and then have an official signature and then should be done. But yeah, that's just important to know.
Has anyone in the room ever received like a request to film, even in that SRP, someone, hey, I want to capture student life at UCSB, is that anybody? Anyone received, you received something?
Yeah. It was before Kiki came. I forget who I called back then, but
It
this was
probably
years
from
ago.
Procurement or policy
Yeah,
at the time,
yeah.
or Andrea Estrada, who since retired, she might have been.
But yeah, I will just say this, it was a relief. Because I was so scared I was gonna say the wrong thing. For those who know me, you know exactly what, that fear is real.
All right, thanks, Kiki.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not gonna spend too much time on talking about branding guidelines. I mean, we as a university collectively have done such a great job embracing university brand standards and activating them across the board. Nowadays, I think most of the inquiries we get is this allowable? I tried something different, right? And so that's where I might pull in Matt Perkle, our designer, and say, hey, let's look at that. We might offer some recommendations, or maybe, we built the whole system to be flexible and easy to implement. But if you don't have a designer on your team, it might be a little more challenging. So we might offer some tools for you, which I'll get to in a moment, to say, hey, this will make things a little easier for you. It's all baked in. Don't spend as much time on it. So we're here for general consultation. If you have any brand questions, I put our direct emails on here, so mine and Matt's. There's also a brand@ucsb.edu email that we receive a lot of inquiries on. So any of those, you can feel free to reach out to us at any time. Related to design, how many of y'all know that there is a university enterprise account for Canva? Okay, a few folks know that. This is something that Jane McTaggart on our team, whose email is up there, actually proposed a couple of years ago. She took it upon herself to reach out to Canva, say, hey, can we get a deal for UCSB? It's slow to grow, but particularly for areas that don't have designers on staff. Does anyone here have a designer on staff? Okay, okay. But it's kind of consistent across the university. I think there's kind of a handful of folks with designer in their title or with that training. And Canva, a lot of the design community was resistant to Canva early on, but we've actually found in utilizing it that it can make a designer's job really easy, because a lot of the communications that we produce across campus can be easily templated. We produce a lot of the same type of collateral and communication, and to ensure proper branding and collateral best practice and social media best practice, you can throw these things into Canva as a template, and then an area can go in and replace their lockup. So for those who don't know what a lockup is, I actually see it around at the SRB, which is fantastic. It is basically taking the UC Santa Barbara official mark and locking it up with your department name. So if you don't have access to a lockup for your department, you can reach out to brand@ucsb.edu and request one. So it'll say UC Santa Barbara Student Health. They've done a great job of bringing in the branding standards. And you can replace in the lower corner, you can put your lockup, you can replace the photo, you can replace the copy, but everything's locked in the right proportion so that, hey, if it displays on a mobile device, the text going to be large enough to see it, right? If it's a bigger poster, is there enough white space so it's not a big cluttered thing? So there's a bunch of templates in there that give you some flexibility to customize it, stick to brand standards, and again, not have to face the intimidation of, you know, some of the Adobe design tools, which are really hard to learn if that's not your specialty. So we have a university Canva account. You do have to pay for your own seats, but over the years, we've kind of brought that cost down. And in December, the University of California announced that there's now a system-wide partnership with Canva that's going to bring free access to all students. So this hasn't been officially rolled out yet, but free access to all University of California students across all campuses. And then staff and faculty will go in a different way, still have to pay, but hopefully that'll bring the cost per seat down as well. So within a few months, we should have more information on that. But if you're ready to go now, you can get into our existing account and that will eventually migrate over to this new partnership.
Our office had been paying for a version of Canva prior to this.
Yep.
With the enterprise account, do you know the difference between like each individual entity paying for, it was like a premium version or something, versus the enterprise account? Is there a couple more features available?
Yeah. So the enterprise account comes with those templates built in. I'm not familiar in terms of the day-to-day, in terms of other features, but it is what's the level? Canva?
It's premium, but the difference is that you have the color palette, the logos, all of our photo library, everything's like in there for you. Yeah.
And I think we discovered early on that the initial pricing was a little more than some areas were paying, but as we worked to bring the pricing down, it was more in the same ballpark. So it's like you get that added benefit of the templates and then the branded features. And like I said, I'm hoping that the costs continue to go down so we can get more people on board. But Jane would be a good person to consult with if you're more interested in more information.
I'm wondering if you have this, and if you haven't, maybe you'll consider like a branding 101 for student staff. So in the division, we employ a lot of students. They do a lot of this work for many departments, and that's a constant turnover every year.
Yes.
So I would love like a video or an online training that we could like bring into our, so that our student staff kind of understand branding a little bit more. I think even professional staff are learning and growing, but tools that's kind of geared for our student workers who do a lot of this in the Canva and social media, so that they can start getting kind of an understanding of the branding guidelines.
Yeah.
Like a branding 101, but directly for like student staff.
Yeah, we've done some things like that. In fact, I think Katie and Matt are presenting as part of the IHC next month. They do a program around just branding and marketing for, I think they focus on like nonprofits and startups. And we do a little bit of a one-on-one on social media as well as design. And Matt does some real-time things about like, here's how you would tackle a flyer or this. So We actually prefer to do it more like on demand. So if y'all want to kind of organize a group of student staff, at the start of a year, we have the materials, and I'd rather present it in that custom way to better understand what they do, and then share with them the tools and the how-tos that are more specific to their roles.
We have a group called PEN, it's the Peer Education Network, and I think it's up to like 150
Oh, wow.
students.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something we could think through.
Yeah,
It's many departments like getting all of our students together for some centralized training.
I love it. I love it. I mean, we all know in this room and in our office, students are carrying out a lot of the communication responsibilities because we don't have the budget to carry full-time marketing communications folks. And they can do a good job with the more guidance that we give them, they'll get even better. So we would welcome that. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Katie to talk about social media consultation.
Yeah, I'll just share quickly that I am available for consultation if your area doesn't have social media yet, or maybe you're considering incorporating it. Maybe you're considering amplifying it and making it better, improving it. I'm available for one-on-one consult. You can reach out to me at my email there. I also have monthly office hours just for kind of like one-offs, or if you want to pick my brain or do a collaboration, we can talk about that. That's in my email signature, all those details, but I'll tell you now it's 10 a.m. on the first Wednesday of the month.
Ask about the social media. There's any way that we can reference best practices?
Yes, we have a brand site, and I think you're going to get into that. On our brand site, there's a whole section of social media guidelines.
Second
Perfect
left there,
question.
yeah, perfect segue into the online self-serve resources that we have available for the campus community. So Katie did a phenomenal job when she came in. One of the first things I said is we need best practice guidelines published. And she worked hard, and we got them on our brand site, and we add to it regularly. It's really comprehensive. There's security protocols on there. Security is a major challenge in social media. If you've seen some of the case studies about hacks at universities, University of Michigan was a big one. But just general best practices, all types of social media fun on there. So that's ready to go. The brand guidelines, they're part of the broader brand guideline website. So you can peruse the visual identity system, color palette, typeface, you name it, it's all on there. The word marks and lockups. The UCSB web theme framework, this is typically handled through, well, it was formerly SIS&T, now ITS. ITS is well-versed in our web theme framework, and what that is, it is basically an out-of-the-box website solution that many student affairs departments are already using, where it ensures consistent branding, consistent user experience, but still allows you the flexibility to customize it to reflect your department's personality and tone. So we have a great partnership with the ITS folks who support student affairs websites. They are one of the best teams on campus when it comes to activating the web theme and rolling it out and customizing it based on their clients' needs. So we have a whole website that is dedicated to learning about the web theme. So let's say you have an outdated website or it's time for a redesign. My recommendation is to start there. Also, half the website's already built, so it has probably saved this campus hundreds of thousands of dollars in sending that money out to web developers. All of the front-end web development is done. So lots of benefits to using the web theme. So consult with your friendly neighborhood web developer about it if you are interested in that. I mentioned our photo library. That is something that's free. I don't want to say free, no cost to staff and faculty to use in their campus communications. You log in at that URL, you've got to authenticate with your UCSB net ID, and you will see a whole lot of photography of campus life. We do partnerships with UCOP, University of California. They come to campus probably every other year, and they ask us to photograph around and work on the releases, and then those photos end up going into the web dam. Like I said, since we have a professional photographer in our office, he's out and about taking photos on campus, uploading them to the library. We did many shoots over here in the SRB, up on the balconies upstairs, and other places. So use those freely. We try to refresh a couple times a year at the very least. There are some gaps in the library, but that's where we're open to feedback, like, hey, if there's a certain type of scene on campus that you're trying to capture that resonates with students, let us know. If we can go out and grab it, great. You can always hire instructional development. They have a photographer if you need a dedicated shoot just for your purposes. Their costs are so fair and reasonable, and you get great work. That's another opportunity for y'all. And then related, there's a video B-roll library that our videographer Jesse O'Sullivan makes available. You can access it through that link there. So you can download campus B-roll, and if you're charged with having to put together a video, setting the scene of our beautiful campus is always a great opening before you get into the nuts and bolts of your messaging. So that is also there for you to use freely. All right, let's shift the conversation here. And I want to open it up a little bit to talk about what y'all face in terms of any Marcom's challenges in your day-to-day. So if you've got an example, we'd love to hear it so that either we can come back to it at the end to address it, or if we're going to address it in the next slides, I can let you know, or we can have a quick conversation about it right now. So anybody want to share challenges that you face when it comes to developing, producing, marketing, communications?
Share one. So I think our department, just the various departments on campus, just have just a variety of resources and things that we've already developed. And the issues that we come across aren't that we don't have enough. It's more so that we aren't reaching the students in ways that they can find us early on. So speaking of first years, both with orientation, even more of a academic outreach. So I'm wondering, is there any resource, is there any strategy that you or other departments have implemented to get some of that outreach more across to a variety of campus outlets that can share with our students?
Gotcha. So it sounds like, to play that back and tell me if I'm interpreting right, it's like a reach question, right? Like you need to find ways to reach the specific students that you need to reach. And full transparency, sometimes on this campus, because we don't have all of the tools we need, it's a little bit of fire on all cylinders and then see what hits and sticks. And for better or for worse, that's the current reality. But I think what we found is the more kind of informal partnerships that we can start with groups on campus and stay coordinated as like a working group, because we have a shared common audience. I'll give you a perfect example of that of a great partnership with student affairs is in our parent engagement. Parents, as you know, are such a critical audience. And I know there have been parent liaisons within student affairs over the years, but to implement like a regular and formal newsletter program, for example, which is what we have, it's hard to get that going and sustain and plan the right content. So what we did in partnership with student affairs a few years ago was start a parent engagement working group. We meet once a month now to plan a monthly newsletter that goes out to them at the end of every month. We have participation from many student affairs areas, from many institutional advancement areas. We talk about the common objectives that we have with parents, and then we build this newsletter together. And it goes out, like I said, at the end of the month, and it's always a nice little medley of information. When it was COVID, it was heavy on the COVID. Now we're getting back to a lot of feel-good things to say, hey, did you know this happened on campus? Here's some of our research news. Here's some housing news that you should know about if you have a student in university housing. So housing contributes to that. Here's a resource of the month for students. So we have people who suggest resources that parents may not be aware of, that they might be able to nudge their students to say, hey, you should take advantage of this. That's a great resource. We put a lot of our best performing social media content out there. So we produce these feel-good videos about our campus and then throw them in the newsletter. So we have found that to be an effective way to just pull together an informal working group and do things like on a monthly basis. And then there's reciprocity there, right? Like, hey, I'll put this in my newsletter if you put my news in your newsletter, and do things that way. So it's not the ideal way, but I think it's working within the guardrails that we all work within, which is limited resources, and we don't always have the most advanced tools to really reach in. So it's a starting point. I think there's other ways, but also something that we can have, conversations. Anybody else want to share a common challenge you face in your day-to-day?
One thing we often struggle with too is balancing, like I said, the fun, feel good posts with like we need to educate students about X policy or prevent students from breaking X policy. So how do you like balance those two,
Yeah.
seeming opposite ends of the spectrum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is looking at the channels that are best suited for certain types of messages, I should say. So social media, we get all kinds of requests to put things on social media. We want social media to remain pristine as an engagement, feel-good channel. There's enough garbage on social media that people are gonna get in their feed that's serious and this, not, and whatnot. We want them to feel good about UC Santa Barbara as a campus, at our various departments and divisions. So we really try to take on that kind of optimistic, inspirational tone in our social media channels versus email, which is a little bit more of a formal channel. We can question its effectiveness, but again, for better or for worse, email is a common channel. That we say, hey, maybe we should send a targeted email that has more policy related items or official announcements that people need to be aware of. Because sort of by default, email is the official communication channel that we all use, right? So it's a little bit of a kind of contact strategy where you look across the channels that you own. I'm gonna get into this in a little bit. And say, okay, this is best suited and have a little strategy for that channel. Here's our social media strategy. Here's our email strategy of what we use that channel for. Important stuff should always go on the website. So we need to train people and make them understand that the website should always have that up-to-date information. So if you're ever in doubt, go to the departmental website and promote your website in that way. Hey, this is where you go to, like the status.ucsb.edu as an IT tool is a great example of that. When there's an IT issue, the emails, the chats, everything starts flying around, right? But the fact of the matter is there's this great website that's there to let people know the outages and issues and status updates. It's just a lot of people don't know about it. So the ITS team is actively trying to remind people like, this is there for you. If you encounter, that should be your first stop. So I think it's a similar model to embrace within your own department.
Having a thought, follow up on what you just said, I'm curious about tools for departments, entities that don't feel good, take that off the table, doesn't exist.
Okay.
So your options are, how do you navigate that complexity or just stay silent or don't, or donate, like, don't post anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious.
I
I
say
get like.
within social media or more broadly?
More broadly, like how do you, many departments and student affairs are supporting students.
Yeah.
In some really dark
Yeah.
times and not saying something can be implicit or, not, so how do you walk that line of like, we have a challenging message to deliver, and how do we do that well, how do we do that in a way that's not causing more harm, kind of those types of, when we sit in the darkness a little bit.
Yeah.
How do we do that in a way? Or do we not, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's always felt like the feel good stuff, that's actually, okay, that is probably easier,
Yeah.
I think it's when we're in.
You're in it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I hear you. And that doesn't come across, so admittedly, it doesn't come across our office as much, but it does. Katie has firsthand experience with things that are witnessed or reported on social media. And then folks come to the central channel, so we understand it to an extent. But I think I'm gonna repeat part of the same answer. It's define the channels so that students understand this is where you should go, or this is how we will reach you to address these things, and be consistent with that, right? And build awareness of how you're going to communicate in those times of crises or just general issues management, what you're going to do there. And then I think the second piece, and if y'all have any thoughts on this, feel free to jump in, is doing focus groups with students and getting the consult from them. It's got to be a close trusted group. And say, here's this, like, what are you, I know y'all do this regularly in your day-to-day, but specifically to communications. craft some different messages and run those by some different groups and see what's the response here. What did we miss? Is our tone right? You know, and if it's a group of students who understand that we're trying to communicate effectively with the broader student population, I think you can get that feedback, and it's always great to either have that early validation or say, oh, wow, I didn't even see that perspective, tweak things. And then I think it also helps, honestly, in our data, it's, hey, we actually ran these by folks. Sometimes we move so quickly. Oh, what do we say? Boom, 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 go. And oh, shoot, we didn't run that by alumni or students or another stakeholder group that the message was intended for. And that is helpful because anything that's insight-based and tested to an extent, we can't have a big formal focus group, but we can pull together, and we do this in our office all the time, the 5 students who are working that day and say, hey, need your input. How does this make you feel? Does it work? What are we missing? And then we can improve our communications through that. Anything else?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
All right, those are great questions. If you have more as we go through this, raise those hands. We're gonna jump in to marketing essentials. Go ahead. Okay, first things first, and this is a challenge within any department, division, college, in the university, or any organizational setting where there's a lot of stakeholders, various decision makers. It is probably the hardest part of your approach to communications. It's gotta be aligned who it is you're speaking to. So yes, it's the broader student population, but do you have a specific segment of the student population that you're speaking to, right? We need to have those conversations within alumni circles. Are you really trying to reach all alumni with this message, or is it very specific alumni? Can we create a video that does X, Y, and Z? Our first question is always like, well, who are we trying to target? Because we can't satisfy or hit on all key messages for all audience segments. So we really need to hone in to be effective with that message. And so as departments and divisions across the university, we should have clear alignment within your department, either on the broader or regular target audience, or specifically at the communication level. If you get a request, hey, can we create this? First question, who are we targeting? Is it all students? Great. Or is it a very specific segment, and what do we know about them so that it can inform more effective communication? The next one is related to that, is what behaviors or perceptions are you trying to influence? So by engaging with a communication or a campaign, what is it that you're trying to get students to do? Many times it may be to utilize your services. Sometimes it might be just more reputational and awareness based. Just know that we are here for you. Sometimes we are trying to shift behaviors, right? And Mark and I were just chatting about pandemic and post-pandemic and remote sessions and Zoom sessions. And like in those times when we were rolling those things out, we're trying to literally shift behavior to consume education in a way that was probably unfamiliar to most, right? So having clear alignment on what those objectives are and what you're trying to do is really important so that you can come back and measure it in some ways. But then also to the next point, what are the key messages that will get them toward those desired behaviors or perceptions, right? So say, okay, I understand who we're trying to reach. I understand how we're trying to influence them. What are those key messages that we can all align on? Do we have 3 to 5 key messages within our department that we should be hitting regularly so it really sinks in, right? So there's repetition and frequency is such a big part of marketing and media planning. We can't just say it once and expect people, oh yeah, I got you. I'll look in my feed and see that social media post, and then I'll walk away and I'll remember it for the rest of my time here. We've got to repeat those messages. It's got to be frequent. We got to do it in different channels. And then again, 3 to 5 key messages so that it really resonates and sinks in and then starts to influence that behavior. And then lastly is putting yourself in the shoes or talking to the students directly and saying, how is it that you are seeking and obtaining information nowadays? And I will give you a great example of an early learning that I had at UCSB, which is when we did a redesign of the ucsb.edu website. Probably back in like 20 15, let's call it. We were like, this is great. This is a one-stop solution for everybody in the world to learn about UCSB. Students, alumni, prospective students, general public, entertainers, they all come to our website. We had a focus group, speaking of getting insight with students. Every student should, I don't go to UCSB.edu. Why would I go to UCSB.edu? Here we are thinking, and people are telling us, we need to get student information on UCSB.edu. Since that point, I think we've rarely heard, we always survey in our office, hey, out of curiosity, you go to UCSB.edu? No, which is fine. I think it's once they come in, they go to the specific areas that they need information for. They don't need that information. So that allowed us to really narrow in our content strategy for the website to focus on prospective students and their families, really. So when you go to the website, we have these debates regularly. People are like, this information isn't there for me. The conversation we need to have is target audience for our website. That's for prospective students. And then we'll say, this is where you should go for information. So all that to say is that we understood that students did not use our website to get information. So we honed it. And then we looked at social media, where we all know by now that is a primary information source, for better or for worse, right? Based on what other people are out there saying. But then we really honed in our content strategy for a couple of our channels, I think Instagram and now TikTok, as a way to deliver information directly to our students. And then, like we learned, alumni are still big on our Facebook. So a lot of our Facebook content these days is skewed towards our alumni. So I'm not going to talk too much about social media because Katie's going to do a little deep dive in a few minutes. But I think those are some kind of starter tips to gain that alignment. And it's hard because everyone's just trying to run and do their day-to-day. But it's important that people say, if I'm going to be charged with developing this communication, I need a little bit of time and alignment so we're all on the same page and we're not backtracking 4 weeks from now when the thing's ready to go out the door and then, oh wait, that's not who we're supposed to be targeting, or that's not one of those key messages. And then speaking of the media landscape, this is like one model for looking at the media mix that any organization has access to. And so it breaks things down into paid, owned, and earned. And I will not read this to you, but the general concept is that there's 3 ways to reach people. You can pay to play, which a lot of media lens channels or properties, that's how they're set up. Facebook punked us early on. It's like, hey, you can reach everybody in the world. Look at all your followers. And then they're like, oh, as the years go by, you actually got to pay for it. Our reach on Facebook is awful these days. Most big organizations can't reach the audiences that they used to, but you can pay for it, right? And with limited budget, it's really challenging to do that. We do not have a broadcast TV budget. Some universities do. That'd be a great way to reach mass audiences and prospective students. We need to do it in more grassroots and organic ways here. Anyway, you see the other channels there. Earned media, it's let's get people to talk about us in a way that's, sometimes there's a cost associated with it, but you can get the press coverage. So Kiki's working day in and day out when there's a great research initiative or student initiative. Hey, local outlets, is this something that you'd be interested in covering? That sounds great. Audience will love it. Great, we just earned ourselves some media coverage there. Getting folks to mention our brand, right? Influencers was another thing that early on was like, oh, an influencer, I'll get your brand out there. And then they figured out how to monetize it. So influencers probably move into paid these days. But a couple of years ago, before it really developed into a business model, that was a great thing to do. I mean, word of mouth is huge, right? Recommendations, #1 most trusted source for recommendations is I heard it from somebody who I know and I trust, because they were saying good things about the university. They had a kid who went to UCSB and said, that was a great experience. Your kid should go there. Fantastic. Retweets or shares. I looked at your content and it was so good that I shared it with my network. Hey, I just earned ourselves greater reach, and hopefully some people who now see it will act on it. So that's the entire media mix, but we're not here to talk about and tackle every single one. My recommendation always for any group on campus is to get your house in order. And that is to focus on your owned channels. And there's a couple of reasons why that's really important. One is, if I want to learn about your department, I'm probably going to go to one of your owned channels, right? I might go to your website, I might go to your social media profile if you have one. So personally, most of the time, I'm not inviting people into my house, my home, unless things at least look good, right? And things are in order. Similarly, think about the digital media landscape like that. Is your house in order? Where is your website the right representation of what you actually offer today? And is it presented in a way that's engaging for students? Are your social media channels active? I'm not going to talk about, Katie's going to talk about that, but that's another touch point to audit and see what other communications are within your own space, blog, email, social media, mobile app, environmental media within a room, right? Is that reflecting the right thing? Your brochures and your collateral. You have full control over those, so you should influence them and make sure they're constantly up to date. It's typically low to no cost. Internal resources can do it. Sometimes you have to outsource certain things, but it's worth it. You have high volume of visits and interactions, and this is a talking point I utilize when encouraging folks to update their websites. If you have access to analytics on your website, there are way more people visiting ucsb.edu, likely prospective students and families, than there are walking across this campus on any given day. Okay, so what I say is we need to invest in those websites because we're investing into beautiful banners and seating areas and keeping things clean on campus. We need to pay that same sort of attention to our websites because there's many more people interacting with them, similar to social media and other channels that we have. And then those are really relationship building opportunities. So I've seen student affairs do a great job of introducing chatbots, and let's test a chatbot. So if somebody comes and has a very specific question, hopefully we can answer it and they can be on their merry way, having their answer, or that maybe there's a follow-up needed and they can communicate with somebody live and say, hey, come in for an appointment, right? So there's huge relationship building opportunities on our websites, in our social media channels, through commenting and DMing. And so once again, if those channels are humming, people will have a better perception of your area and hopefully, really get value from their interactions with you, and have a positive experience where y'all are contributing to that UCSB experience. Just doing a quick time check. All right, we're gonna hustle through some of these checklists and then open it up for conversation. Making your website shine. That's the first own channel that I would recommend looking at. I'll jump through these real quick. Navigation that's intuitive and easy to use. Our web theme comes with a standard navigation. The benefit of that is that why should I relearn a navigation every time I go to a new UCSB website? The categories might be different, but I should always be looking in the same place to be like, this is how I obtain information. So that's a question to ask yourselves and to test. It's really easy to test website navigation. Grab a group of students, get them to volunteer, get some pizza, say, hey, want you to run through this. What do you think? Take that feedback and make improvements. Communicating what your organization does and how students can benefit. I know that y'all know this, but across the university, it's not always evident, right? And share those key messages that you aligned on with your organization. Are they coming across on that homepage so that people see, I get it, and it's really sinking in? Ensure that the content is accurate, up to date, and reflective of present day. Does it appear to be from this decade? We as a university have really done a great job in the past few years getting into our modern framework, but 5 years ago, it didn't look like that. So that's why this web theme solution was needed to make it easier. Okay, but again, make sure it's accurate, up to date. It's not always easy to find the resources, but it is worth the investment. The last thing you want is somebody coming to your website and getting that wah feeling, right? They don't have what I need. This seems inaccurate. I'm moving on to the next information source on Twitter or Reddit. Hey, Reddit, what's going on? How do I get this? And then it opens wide up and they're getting good information. They're getting false information. You don't want that. Make sure your own channels are on point. Inspire a feeling on your homepage and related to that. Utilize photography to tell a story. Nothing like going to a website and seeing UCSB students or staff, friendly staff that are there to help, right? So think about it. Is it inspiring a feeling? And if not, what can we do to inspire the desired feeling that y'all have? Ensure the site is responsive across devices. That should be standard these days. Some websites still aren't, meaning if I access it from a tablet or a phone or a desktop, that I can still peruse it and get all the information that's on there. Identify the most sought after information, make it easy to find. This is where if you have access to analytics, see what pages people are visiting most frequently. Maybe it's a page that's buried in the navigation, but it's really important and you might need to bring it to the homepage because you know right out of the gate that people are looking for that stuff, so make it easy for them. Back in the day, I don't know if it resonates with anybody, Tootsie Roll, Tootsie Pop used to have a campaign with like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Was that right? Okay, I think similarly for website, how many clicks does it take to get to the information I'm needed? And if it takes, for Tootsie Pop, we wanted them to go all the way through. For websites, it's kind of the opposite. We wanted to minimize the clicks that it takes to get there. Right? Follow university brand standards. We talked about that, and make sure your content is accessible. There are lots of accessibility resources on campus. The web theme is built with a lot of accessibility features that come with it, but that's super important to make sure that anybody can access the content on your website. I'm going to share an example of Spotlight. It's wellbeing.ucsb.edu. This is a web theme site. I see students, and what I love about this website, other than using the web theme, what are you looking for today? Let's get you right to the information that you're trying to find. They use iconography, which is easy to scan, and then you're in. I want any of these. I'm sure if I clicked, I can get to the information. So really simple website, not too much information that people are being bombarded with, but let's get you to where you need to go. So kudos if anyone here is involved in the well-being group. There's other examples of good websites. This was one that just resonated with me as I looked around last week.
Thank you, Alex. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about building your online social media community. That's another one of our areas that we really think one of our marketing essentials that you can be working on. The first thing is choose your social media platform that will best fit your objectives, your goals, your resources. For instance, the student affairs social media presence does not have a Facebook page for the same reason that the Gaucho parents social media presence does not have a TikTok account, right? So meet your audience where they are. You know, think about the student resources that you have to create content and the time in your day and week as staff to be able to really be invested in mentoring them and making sure that your social media presence is secure and professional and getting across the points that you need to be doing. Some of the next few steps are just some things that we like to cover when we suggest that you're really like working on your social media presence. These are some really easy high-level things that you can take care of quickly. Making sure that your username is ownable and recognizable, not using acronyms, starting with UCSB. So let's use student affairs again for an example. The handle or the username is UCSB students. Easy to find, easy to understand what that is. Then the display name, that can be a little bit more descriptive. So, you know, UC Santa Barbara Student Affairs. And then our bio or our about section, if you will, we want to make sure that that is a place that you can be sharing more descriptive language about kind of what it is that you are offering and what can your audience get out of that specific platform, right? Like what are they going to be expecting to see when they come to visit your specific channel there? I also skipped over your profile photo. That's a great place to incorporate the brand, you know, utilize the brand colors, make sure that you have maybe your area, if you're able to like abbreviate your area of campus in some way that's recognizable to people, you can utilize it there, or just use a photo, something else that's identifiable. It's important to think about platform specific content. So if you think about it, I'll use our example for the UC Santa Barbara channels. If you do have more than one social media channel, thinking about what specifically is going to go there. For us, like our Twitter or X, if you will, that account, we're talking about news, we've got faculty highlights, we're sharing different research stories. And then when you're thinking about our Instagram, it's a very different experience. It's more visual. It's talking about the UC Santa Barbara experience. It's a much more immersive kind of content that we're putting out there. So think about that while you're creating content for your platform or platforms. And then it's important to stay active. We suggest at least weekly being active. Ideally, it's every day or every couple of days. That really signifies to your visitors that like you're active, you're engaged. And it's a place that they can feel trusted in visiting. An easy way to stay active is through using a content plan. So building a content plan can be, it doesn't have to be scary or a big endeavor. It can be as simple as a Google Sheet. That's what we use in OPAC. Everyone who is involved in content creation, students and staff, we all have access to it, so people can kind of know like what's going on, what are the talking points that we are going to be coming up in the next few weeks. I like to think of it also as like content buckets. So on our content Google Sheet, we have our themes listed. These are the types of themes that we want to hit on a weekly or daily basis. Maybe you have like on Monday, you share, that example, motivational Monday. Like maybe, there's something that you can kind of do where it's repetitive and you're sharing specific types of content throughout the week or maybe throughout the month. And that can help you kind of have placeholders and make it a little bit easier to quickly create content. It's also where we put our holidays, because the holidays are great. A nice, easy way to make sure that we're continuing to engage. Be conversational, find your personality and your voice. In social media, we don't want it to be an echo chamber, right? We want to be engaging with people there. So try to find out different ways that you can engage people using different tools, asking questions, making sure that you're replying to comments. All of those things do matter, and it makes people stay. And then don't be afraid to experiment. One of the accounts that I'm really enjoying watching flourish on campus lately is UCSB Library. If anybody's noticed, they're like trying out memes and they're doing a lot of video, and they're definitely experimenting and they're pushing the envelope a little bit. So the worst that can happen is it flops and then you try a different avenue. But don't be afraid to experiment. And especially when platforms come out with different features, that's a great invitation to try that. Usually the platform will encourage you and reward you for using their new features. Accessibility is super important. We are an institute of higher education. We need to be accessible in our content, to be inclusive. There is a link here, so when you get this presentation, you can go check out more of the best practices for accessibility. But high level, we're talking about captions for videos. That's accessibility and also just a better user experience for people who are, let's say, sitting in a public place, just watching their feed with the audio off, right? We need to be having captions. We need to be using alt text for every image or photo that we share on social media. So if you're thinking about the flyer that you recently posted with paragraphs on it, that has to be in your description. And maybe you can put something a little bit more engaging in your video, in your photo, right? You need to have accessible alt text for screen readers. And another couple of things, hashtags, we call them, the hashtags that we want to use are called camel case. So you're thinking about capitalizing the first word of the first letter of every word and a hashtag. So it's easier to read, and then thinking about how many emojis you're using. If you've ever heard a screen reader read off like a line of emojis, it's a hot mess. So really think about like toning that down, right? 1 or 2 emojis, space them out. These are the types of things that we think about when we think about accessibility in social media. And then last but not least, a little bit of a shameless plug, please register your accounts if you haven't already with UC Santa Barbara social media directory. We started this initiative a couple of years ago, and really we want to be able to build a community in social media, understand who are the people behind these accounts. UC Santa Barbara has hundreds of social media accounts out there representing the brand. So we're trying to make sure we know everyone who's involved in that effort. And also just for security purposes, resources, being able to share those with you. This is all, these are all features of the social media directory. And I want to highlight this area of campus, another highlight, UCSB Rec. I see adventure programs maybe over here. Anyone from Rec? Hi. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight this account. Their accounts have been just doing a really great job of using the brand. You've got Rec really big there on the profile photo, so you see what it is. The usernames are very clear. The display name is clear. You've got, I think I mentioned our brand colors already in the highlights. And then I'm just gonna click on here. It's definitely fun to see the difference in variety of content. There's video, they're talking about different programs that they have, weekly episodic content. This is great, like a content series, talk about your content buckets that way. Here's a trend that they hopped on. I think there's like a holiday post coming up, year in review, Spotify Wrapped. So just finding ways to make themselves relevant. They've been doing a great job at that. And here's their YouTube account. Again, same avatar, same profile photo, same display name. It's all consistent. It's consistent branding. It makes you the visitor come here and think, okay, this is the official account. Find your fit. You've got the tagline. It's all coming through. And I think some of these are different like programs that they're offering. But yeah, so kind of a seamless experience as you go from different channels. Okay, hand it back over to you. Any questions? Yeah.
I just have a little bit of to Amanda when we first sat down and I was asking her about the Rex and it turned out they have a couple team of 13, 15 students, 12, excuse me, that work for their social media. I am the sole person in my office and it's just part of my work that I do. Are there resources for smaller departments that don't have a team that can she would be able to help connect us? So she would recommend some student groups that might be interested in helping us. Are there, yeah, I'm just looking for more resources because we don't have the capacity to, and I love Rexen. I love so much about what they do and including their branding. And I was asking her specifically about a video that I would love to do for our office. And she said it was done by students years ago. So just wondering, are there resources for smaller offices that you can help connect us with or student groups that might be interested in teaming up with an office like to create content or videos or things like that?
Offhand, I mean, I'm thinking of like the AMA chapter, American Marketing Association chapter. Students there might be looking for experiences. I know Gaucho Creative, I'm not sure what their model is, but I know that they do work as kind of like a business almost, but they're students that it's basically a creative shop of students who are interested in this area. But I would encourage you to consult with me. I'd love to sit down and talk to you about, we could kind of brainstorm that out and figure out ways, but the other thing that really comes to mind, I know it's not like students to do the work, but just utilizing tools like all of our branded templates. Templates can really help you maybe with like design at least. That's something that
I think we do. Start that. I'm new into this role right now, so and Alex, I messaged with you before. So I think we do have kind of a foundation of these things, but taking it to like the constant social media content and production is really a challenge. So that's kind of what I was thinking along the lines of.
Yeah, it's a challenge and we don't have it here, but I think knowing you have limited resources, that's important and kind of starting smaller or really focusing in on like, let's do one channel really well versus trying to do 3 channels and then mediocre. I'm not saying that, I don't know which account you're talking about, but sometimes that's a pitfall, right? Like we got to be everywhere. No, let's focus on one and train folks to go to this one for the information and try to do a really good job because it can become stressful where you're like, oh, I got to do it on these 3 channels plus this and this material. But yeah, I think a consultation with Katie would be a great start on that one.
I was begging, I don't say begging, but I was asking and talking about TikTok with you for a while. And he was like, you don't have the resources for that, right? Like, what is our plan? And until we got a student group to do it, to hire, to get the budget approved, all of that, that's when we went to that channel. So similar application of what you're saying.
Katie put together a fantastic proposal to build the case for bringing on a bigger student team of content creators. And we started small and then now it's grown much bigger. And so I think that could also be a good thing just to share with you, like, hey, can we build the case for more resources, share examples of what's been done in other areas. But yeah, I think that's a great conversation and a great question. Okay, I'm gonna hustle through the next couple because I want to make sure we still have enough time for any questions at the end. Win the inbox, like I said, email is not a necessary evil. It can deliver a lot of good information, but we know whether in our personal lives or through the stakeholders that we have that they're not always read, which can be frustrating. It's always in the details with email. So this checklist here, I'm not going to go through every point. It really is about thinking about the inbox experience and all the little details that go with it. Everything from what time of day you're sending and testing that regularly. Who's the email coming from? We used to have pitfalls where we would say UC Santa Barbara division of blank. And by the time that's in your, nobody can see what that division is in the from field, right? And you're like, why can't I see it? So let's abbreviate those and kind of come out and say it in a shorter way. What's that subject line? Is it generic or does it really get me to open it? Mobile devices we've talked about, testing all of the above factors. It should be ongoing testing and experimentation, same way that we talked about in social media to try different things. In email, this last point is important because you're probably communicating with a lot of the same student segments that a peer department is communicating with. Coordinate with your department and division to avoid redundancy of message and tune out, right? What if everyone ends up sending on Wednesday? Chances are, you know, there's limited capacity to read these things, so not everyone's is gonna get read. So more internal coordination within our own division, we do it with our alumni and development colleagues who are communicating with our alumni audience, right? We have an email calendar that we all access to be like, who's emailing when? And then we have a mediator in the group that's like, all right, we both want to email Thursday. Let's talk about objectives and timing and who has flexibility. Branded templates, I think already exist in many student affairs accounts. We can help with those. Don't try to achieve too much with one email. Try to maintain a singular objective and call to action. And then make sure that call to action is clear and prominent. I mentioned alumni affairs. They've done a phenomenal job in the email game the past couple of years. I love both of these emails that are recent. They now summarize all of their events for the month in one email, whereas they used to just fire off as soon as that event was announced. Here's another event email. They've consolidated that to make it easier for our alumni to scan and see what's going on here in the month of January. Clear call to actions. Here's a summer invitation and clear call to action to book now for summer 2024. Simple, beautiful, on brand, really good job. The last kind of category is just to take a look around your physical environments, mostly your physical environments, to find ways, kind of unexpected ways to convey your department's personality and your tone, right? So building signs and directional signage, walls, paint, art, things like that. Email signatures. Do you have unified email signatures across your department? There's an email signature tool that anybody can utilize. Your presentations, you can take our existing, PowerPoint or Google Slides templates and customize them for your area. Pick a color in the palette that really resonates with your department and own it and use it consistently. Consider refreshing your most commonly used print materials when they're starting to deplete, right? That could be everything from stationery to envelopes to business cards to posters, and you can use the templates like we've talked about. Here's a good example of something that the undergraduate advising office did a couple of years ago. If you're ever in Cheadle Hall, as soon as you walk in, you can see these beautiful panels with students and faculty with some inspirational messaging. A lot of people just wait there. And so why not, jazz up the visuals so that they can get some inspiration while they're waiting and while other people are passing through Cheadle. Our space management group does a phenomenal job. They come to us regularly when it's time to refresh certain classrooms. Say, hey, let's bring some color pop into these classrooms. This one is actually really nice as well. But they started to use some of the aqua from the color palette, the navy from the color palette. And it's just these little ways to reinforce that university brand. And sometimes they can be high cost, admittedly, but sometimes there's little simple things you can do on a low to no budget to kind of create that feeling. And then the last point we'll leave you with relative to the slides, and y'all will get these slides to review on your own, is be consistent. And oftentimes in branding and marketing, we sit there and we say, be consistent, but what really we're trying to build with that consistency is one, familiarity. Oh, I know that department, I know what they offer, right? But ultimately, we're trying to just build trust with folks, so that they come to you regularly, utilize your services, utilize your consultation, right? At the end of the day, across higher ed, we're trying to build trust, and we all know what higher ed's been through recently, and trust is harder probably to build than it ever has been, and consistency can contribute to that trust. It's not the end all be all, but it is one way to help in that. So that's a really important point that we wanted to end on, and we've got few minutes to go through any additional questions or discussion items. Go for it.
I think one thing I've seen with social media is it becomes very like transactional, or at least how students interact with the department. So how do you think as a department we can make that shift to make it more of that relationship that we're talking about?
Your thoughts?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, sorry.
Transactional.
So I think like when students come to, I was thinking like SEAL, so student engagement, clubs and words. A lot of it's very transactional. They have an event they want to put on. They come to us to get it approved, and then they don't talk to us again. They have their next event to put on. And we're really looking to switch that into building that relationship where they can come to us with those questions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. If, from a social media approach, like maybe you could be like highlighting some of those groups and orgs, right? Like finding ways to engage with them more through social. Could be a nice way. I think highlights is always a nice way, student highlights. Making it feel less transactional. Yeah, I think giving them like giving them that feeling of being supported in a way through recognition.
I think data capture, you mentioned like events is really important. So what kind of information can you gather about their interests? What do they want to hear about from your department? And then use that as insight for your subsequent communications while you have that, you know, transactional moment where they're in person for an event. How can you ask them to fill out a survey so that you hear a little bit more? And then they'll see, and then perhaps follow your social channels or subscribe for a newsletter, what have you. But then if they see like, oh, they're starting to deliver more of that, then it's like, okay, I am a little bit more engaged and bonded with your department. I can see that you heard and I'm seeing some of these things take place. You might be able to, if you do it long-term enough, to really have a more segmented approach to email, where if you capture that data and say, this is the group that wants to hear about event invites, but this group also wants to hear about services, day-to-day services. Then over time, you can segment those emails and deliver more targeted information. So focus on the moments I'd say that you have the captive audience to get the information and the insight from them to kind of keep going.
I had a question kind of related to what we were talking about earlier of firing on all cylinders and just seeing what sticks around campus, and recreation consistently uses like essay announcements to each staff and like the other essays emails for students and diginos and housing and stuff like that. Do you know if there's a centralized list or something of like, here's all the campus things you can send your content to and it'll get published in like any newsletter or something along those lines?
Yeah, I don't believe there is, because I think large part every department or division has slightly different criteria. So there's kind of like no guarantees like, oh yeah, it'll go here. However, there is a marketing and communications Google group that is utilized just for that purpose to say, hey, I've got information that I need to reach X, Y, and Z audience. If any of y'all wouldn't mind sharing, give them the content, and this is where it's, you know, we all try to make each other's jobs easier, right? And so if you give them an image and some suggested copy, that makes it easier for them to throw it in a newsletter or put it in a social media feed, right? So it's actually there's a lot of reciprocity that takes place in that group that I witness. Like Katie puts things in there when we have a big social media campaign that we want everybody sharing. Other times people are like, hey, I've got an enrollment for TMP and we need to get this message out. So if anybody is, you know, working with that audience, please get it in there. It's an informal way of doing it, but I have seen it be effective. And I would start there. And so if anybody is in a specific communication role and wants to be part of that chat room, just let us know and we'll add you. And it's a community, right? Like many of our chat rooms that start to form across campus, and it's good. It's pretty, I'd say it's active, maybe not weekly, but monthly for sure. There's some chatter on there. It's also a great place to go with, I've got a really pressing issue right now that I need to solve. Does anyone have experience with this? Can you throw me some ideas? And the group will chime in and be like, oh, go over here and talk to so-and-so, or here's an idea. So there's a lot of value in that. There's another question.
Yeah, Katie, I'm curious, like I'm just thinking Instagram, if you have a public account, strategies for increasing followers, or does that not matter as much? Or if you're really like putting in the effort, how should your following be growing monthly? I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's any kind of like best like standard for like what like benchmarking, what you want to kind of get to, but I would say that there is an element of like your following doesn't really matter. If there is engagement, that's what matters. Like, are the people who are following you engaging with your content? And you can find that out in your insights, right? In the analytics section of your Instagram. So you want to be seeing those green arrows, right? Like that would be nice on a monthly basis. You should be seeing the green arrow that it's going up, things are going up, engagement's going up. But there's really no like, you know, at this point, you don't like it used to be that if you had 10,000 followers that you could like add a link in your story, like that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that engagement. I've seen amazing, there are some accounts that I follow that have very small followings, but they have extremely valuable information and I love following them because I get something out of following them. So I think that's kind of what you're going for.
So focus more on engagement and less on followers.
Yeah, engagement and the content that you're putting out there. You had talked a little bit about like transactional, like thinking about the content that it is a little bit like what's in it for me? Like, why should I follow you? Right? Like making sure that you're sharing content that people are really getting something out of.
Add one thing to that, it's been building on that point. When I worked in the agency world, it was early digital, it was engagement begets reach, right? So thinking about if someone's engaged, they're gonna tell their friend, there might be some organic growth from that. So that helps. I think the other thing is back to captive audiences. Throw a QR code while students are waiting in, your office or for a presentation that says, scan that QR code, it takes me right to your Instagram channel while you're waiting. Give me that follow. So the reminders of kind of following you will also help for some, I think, organic growth. And I've seen a lot of folks utilize the downtime at the start or end of a discussion to get a desired action.
Making sure like little things, your icons are in your emails or in the footer of your website. Even I've come across areas of campus where the footer doesn't even have their updated socials. So that little things like that.
I'm recognizing the time. Can we give some love to our OPAC friends really quickly? So thank you to Kiki and Katie and Alex for taking time. I'm spinning with a lot right now. I'll tell you all right now, you've pushed my gears into action. So thank you. Just by a show of hands, I want to return to our objectives and then we'll get out of here. So first one was, please raise your hand if you feel they explained when and why to contact UCSB Public Affairs. Wonderful. Please raise your hand if you feel now ready to analyze marketing essentials that we can all use for improving our department's communication and impact. Are you analyzing? That is the question. And last but not least, are you now exploring new and exciting ways to tell your stories and improve your services for modern university students, parents, and colleagues? Okay, right on. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to hit stop on the record now. If you have more questions, I'm sure they're available and they've obviously made themselves available. We'll get this video and we'll get the slide deck posted up on the assessment initiative. I hope you all, for those who are working on the annual report, are in touch with your buddies, many of whom are in the room right now. And we will see you all at the next one next month. We're going to send that announcement out soon. So thank you all so much for being here. And thank you so much for doing this for us.